Hey everybody, I'm Scott Allen Miller. Today on Sam IT, we're going to talk about semantics and being pedantic, because I like these words. But more importantly, in IT, especially in peer review opportunities, very likely, if you're doing IT well, people are going to spend a lot of time complaining about your semantics, or that you are demanding other people being semantically correct. Well, let me give you a little bit of information. In most things in life, and in IT specifically, saying that someone's being semantic about something is just saying that they're being accurate and helpful. If you're not being semantically accurate, you're being dishonest at worst, and at best, just useless. But in IT, everything we do depends on semantics. I mean, everything. The difference in little loose bits of semantic will completely change everything that you're discussing. Whether it's products, and a great example here is Zen Server. Capital X-E-N, capital S-E-R-V-E-R is one product. But Zen Server, capital X-E-N space S-E-R-V-R is a different product. You can't play around with these things. You can't just be loose with the spelling. You can't put a Z in there. That's a different product. You can't capitalize or choose where to capitalize. That changes what product. You can't just put a space in the name. It changes the product. And when someone's asking a question, knowing exactly which product they're talking about kind of matters. Because if you answer a question for someone and they're getting the thing that they're asking wrong, you're going to answer for either the wrong thing as to what they meant, or the wrong thing as to what they said. And at best, you're not going to know what they meant. People like to act like the context gives away what they mean, and once in a while this is true, but the majority of the time, it's not actually true. In fact, and I've been involved in this a lot, the more that someone says, you're being pedantic, you could just look and use common sense and figure out what this is. It's obvious, everyone knows. And you take other people in that conversation and ask them separately what they think the person meant, you will often find that the more that people were adamant that everyone would know exactly what they were talking about, the less likely it's actually true. Cloud is a great example. Take people who talk about cloud and cloud computing. They'll throw the word around like crazy, and when you say you can't just use cloud, it doesn't mean what you think, they'll get angry and tell you how obviously everyone knows what you mean when you say cloud, even if it's not technically accurate. Yet, if you take them and those other people that they claim all know exactly what they mean and ask them individually what was meant, they will all have a completely different definition, often highly opposed. And this creates a lot of problems because people want to know things, and cloud is a great example. What are some of the reasons to use cloud or not to use cloud? Well, often the reasons that are given if you ask that question, and I dare you to go do this in a public community, the things that you're going to get told are often not just kind of wrong and not applicable, they're often completely backwards. And that's a real problem because people start to understand a little bit, they think about what this thing is, and then the information they get about it is completely different, and then everyone skews off in a different direction, and the amount that people misunderstand just gets bigger and bigger. And you can't provide real IT in this way. Now, these things are one way for like online communities, but when you're dealing with, really careful commands, you can end up with the same problem. You can't give a close enough command, do an rm-rf star. Oh, no, I meant slash. Whatever. It's all the same. No, one makes your system crash and one doesn't. These aren't things you can play around loosely with. It doesn't really matter what part of IT you're in, everything we do matters, even conversational. I have seen firsthand on multiple occasions people who thought they could play around with the language to sound cool by using a little bit more fancy words than someone else might have used. And a common one that I've seen for the last decade is people, instead of telling someone to reply, telling them to revert. Of course, revert doesn't mean reply, and it means something extremely technical and specific. Take the commands that I asked you to do in this communication and go back to before you did them, put the state of whatever I had you do back. Nothing like reply. If I told you to deploy a piece of software and reply when done, that would mean that I want you to deploy a piece of software, and when you're done, let me know that you completed it. That's pretty straightforward. But if I tell you to deploy a piece of software and revert when done, that means to deploy the software and then remove it as if it had never been deployed. This is a completely logical thing for someone to do in IT because we may need to test if a deployment and reversion work the way we expect, and that the reversion should take us back to having no artifacts left over from the deployment. Nowhere in what I just asked you to do would you expect there to be the software remaining when you're done, nor have I asked you to reply to me when you're done. So there may be no communications that the whole thing happened, and to the person who thought they were going to get a response, they believe that the person ignored them, whereas the person who actioned correctly what they were asked to do may have done exactly what they've been asked. This may sound like an absurd example, and you might say, well, that's an obvious case where people wouldn't do that, and yet Fortune 100 environments have gone down and lost production because of exactly this. One person thought it would be funny to use words they didn't really understand, and another person understood exactly what it said and followed the letter of the law. They had authorization from a manager to do exactly a thing, and it's not their position to question what that person means when there's no ambiguity in what was said. Just because you may be able to guess with common sense that they didn't actually mean to revert doesn't mean that it's not a sensible thing to have asked, nor does it imply that there is ambiguity. Incorrectness is not the same as ambiguity. So this happens a lot in IT in all kinds of different ways. People misunderstand what other people are saying, and then outside observers like to say, no, well, everyone would understand, and that's completely false. It simply doesn't work that way. But people who don't really know what they're working on, it's handy to have that ambiguity because it makes everyone unable to really do what they need to do. So the more you're trying to be capable, the more you need your semantics to be correct. The less you're trying to be capable, the less capable you are, the more useful it is for you to have everyone kind of have ambiguity or confusion, because then everyone's making mistakes equally or needs clarification on everything, and that helps hide the fact that you don't really know what you're doing. Watch for this, especially online. If you have people who are constantly using terms incorrectly, they're probably going to struggle in their career, but people who are promoting the misuse of terms are probably in a position of already trying to cover up the fact that they don't know what the things mean. For example, people who are using cloud loosely, if you're using cloud and don't know what it means, you literally know that you don't know what it means when you use it. That should be kind of obvious. When we just use what we think are gibberish words, we know when we're using gibberish words. We may not know what they meant, but we know that they're gibberish to us. If people are then responding and respond in nonsensical ways, you can see this reaction happen a lot. And it's just a lot of people looking to talk and try to sound to casual observers as if they know something, when in fact it's really kind of a self-fulfilling bit of confusion. And no one actually benefits from it except they get the feeling of having gotten to talk. The only legitimate thing when there's this kind of ambiguity is to push for semantic accuracy. Any response to something like that that does not push for semantic accuracy is just talking to hear themselves talk, because they don't know what's being asked and the other people don't know what's being answered. Now, one of the ways we can combat this is never use words you don't know what they mean, unless without getting clarification, right? If you're going to use cloud and you feel that other people may not know what it means, maybe provide a little bit more information. Or don't use that term, because if you're confused, maybe they are too. But if you're confused at all, don't use the term as if you know what it means, because invariably, one, you're going to be torn apart, and two, you're not going to get the useful information you were looking for. So there's no simple answer here, but one important thing is never respond that semantics aren't important. In fact, possibly nothing in IT is more important, because everything is built on semantic accuracy. Because semantic accuracy is just another term for accuracy, and accuracy is just another term for truth. And in a field where nothing can be implied, or essentially nothing can be implied, that truth and accuracy is the foundation of everything we do. Thanks for joining me. Remember to like, subscribe, put your comments below. Where have you seen semantic softness go awry and disaster occur because people thought they could just throw terms around? And remember, you can sponsor us on Patreon. A little bit of sponsorship can go a long way to keeping this series going. Discover how easy and affordable business telephone service can be. Say it with Talkadillo.